3 new Star Wars figures from the recent vintage collection wave have arrived here in New Zealand, so let's take a look.
Villa Varykino. If it's Star Wars, we collect it.
Hello there, thanks for visiting Villa Varykino. I'm a big fan and collector of Star Wars 3.75-inch action figures, and I gotta say, one of my favorite eras for Star Wars figures is now the modern Hasbro vintage collection line. In terms of the articulation, the detail, the packaging, it's just really fun, and I'm always excited for us here in New Zealand when we get new figures around the same time as they are releasing internationally. That didn't always happen in the past, and oftentimes they just never turned up here at all. So I was really excited to spot these 3 figures available locally in stock. So of course I had to pick up each one. There are a couple of other figures from this particular assortment that haven't yet been available in New Zealand. I'm definitely going to try and track those down, but I was so excited about these 3. I just wanted to jump on camera and take a closer look at each one. I think it's really fun, and interestingly they all have green backgrounds. I thought that was kind of curious. So thanks so much for hanging out with me and joining me as we just celebrate Star Wars action figures. This is always just a fun hobby. I love just checking out new figures in hand. So let's get stuck in. I'm going to start off with Skeleton Crew. Personally, for me, I'm really excited to have a Skeleton Crew action figure in my hands before the debut of the series. That feels like that's a little bit of a rarity in the modern era. Now, I know Disney and Lucasfilm really don't want spoilers to leak out, so they are generally a little bit more tight-lipped in terms of giving out information to toy manufacturers, but I think it's just something exciting. It kind of reminds me of those preview figures from the Phantom Menace era, when you got sort of characters and figures and you didn't really know that too much about it, but just excited about the upcoming movie. And so I'm just really excited for Skeleton Crew. So I was really excited to see that I could actually get a figure before the show aired. And of course we have one of the lead characters, Jod Na Nawood, played by Jude Law. So let's take a quick look at the backing card. We've got the Skeleton Crew logo here in red, matching the other series logos. This one's quite wide. We've got a thick text for the logo on 2 lines. So it pushes the Star Wars logo here quite close to the hanger cutout, which is kind of interesting. A little bit lower down with a bit more of a gap on other carded figures. We've got a green accent color here for Jod with the nameplate there with white font. And we can also see the green behind the figure there as well. Now I know Hasbro probably doesn't have too much say in terms of the promotional images that they get, especially ahead of release. The artwork here for Jod is a little bit dark, and we do have some good lighting on his face. The background is very nondescript. We're not really getting much information here. And we don't see a lot of his costume. It almost looks like normal clothes. We've got a shirt, a bit of a jacket there, and we don't really see much else. We've got the Kenner logo there as always. So overall, probably not my favorite in terms of backing card photo here, in terms of just, it's not really showing us much, but I know we might get other versions of Jod later down the line. And of course, once the series is out, we can get more information and details on the packaging here. Moving on to the back, we've still got that same accent green color there. We've got the backing card and we've got the figure pose. So we can see a bit more of the detail of his costume here, because it's, you know, not obscured by the plastic bubble here. We've got a little bit more of an open jacket here as well, so I can actually see some of the details of his costume there. And he's got his accessory hood on as well, so we can see that separate here in the bubble. I'm hoping that's not going to be too hard to put on the figure. We've got a little bit of a blurb, but in usual case here, it is more about the series rather than the character, to kind of try and avoid specific spoilers. It reads, when 4 kids make a mysterious discovery on their seemingly safe home planet, they get lost in a strange and dangerous galaxy. Finding their way home, meeting unlikely allies and enemies will be a greater adventure than they ever imagined. So very high level, no spoilers there. This one is VC310 there. We have the vintage collection logo there. I do really like the preview images here. I know the older vintage card style was more inspired by the Kenner era with the black and the sort of the colorful rectangles there showing other figures from the wave, but I do like the sort of the posing ideas and some nice shots of the accessories here on the back. And generally I have mine posed from the front if I keep them on their backing card, so the back doesn't really bother me too much. So let's take a closer look at the figure through the bubble. Now, I will be doing full unboxing videos of all of these figures very shortly, but I just wanted to take a closer look just because I was so excited. I can see some really nice gold, it looks like metallic details on the cuff of the sleeve. That's really nice because there's not as much detail visible just with the jacket sitting here like that. It looks plastic. We've got a holster visible in that opening there as well. We've got a really interesting looking blaster pistol here as well, giving me sort of very old world kind of pirate vibes there with that particular blaster pistol style there. And we've got this hood to put over him. He's got gloves on as well, and we can see his boots coming out there. He's going to look, I think, a lot cooler once we get him out of the packaging and put these accessories on him, because you can see that scarf is going to hang down a lot. And I think that that preview image is giving us some really good ideas for how he's going to look with that sort of hip sort of slung holster there. And you can kind of see the gold detail on the cuffs. That's really interesting. Again, you don't get a lot of those cool costume details with this very dark picture there, so I think that's a shame. But overall, really exciting. I'm really hoping that it won't be too long before we get some of the other characters. I want the full lineup of those 4 kids as well. You know, I want the whole sort of set, because it's skeleton crew. We want the whole crew. So hopefully not too long, but it does make sense. He is a lead character, so of course we're going to go with this one as well. Interesting to see if Hasbro will release the kids as 2-packs or whether we'll get them all individually carded, perhaps with more accessories to sort of make up for it. But I guess time will tell. I'm just excited to have a skeleton crew figure in my hands before the show. I'm excited, and he looks really cool, and I can't wait to open him up. Next up, we have K-2SO on an Andor series card. So for me, this is particularly exciting for a number of reasons. Again, like Jod, I like getting figures before the series has come out, which is kind of rare in the modern era, because of course K-2SO does not appear in season 1 of Andor. He has been teased as appearing in Andor season 2. We got a little bit of a tease in a recent video clip there, so this is really fun to see, and our first sort of Andor version of this figure. Now, I believe this figure is a reissue of a previous K-2SO figure from Rogue One VC 170, but for me in New Zealand, I never found it. I don't even know if that particular wave ever made it to New Zealand. I certainly never spotted it, so I don't own that one. So for me, who missed out, I'm really excited about this particular reissue, because if I really want to, I can buy a second one and add it to my Rogue One section and add this one to my Andor section. I really like reissues, particularly for those sort of not so evenly distributed figures, giving collectors a second chance. And I think he'd be fun for a bit of an army build as well. We do get some hints at sort of a lot of KX droids en masse in a bit of a flashback in The Mandalorian, and I think that they sort of look really menacing when you see multiples of them together. So that would be kind of fun if we do see that in Andor series 2. So we've got a green color here for the nameplate and behind the figure, white font. Interesting that we have the phonetic spelling of K-2SO's name underneath there, perhaps to make it different from earlier versions. We've got the Andor series logo there in red. Now, I believe this might be a composite image here, because we don't really have a full proper promotional imagery of K-2SO. It certainly doesn't look like the sort of small glimpses that we've seen, but who knows, maybe Hasbro got a bit of an early image to use there for their toys. And I don't know if the background looks familiar. It's just a few sort of glimpses here, some orange and red markings. It's a little bit hard to tell what's going on, but of course we haven't seen the series yet. The figure itself does look really cool. I like the paintwork. And even when it comes to reissued figures, I've found with some of the recent ones, I noticed in the recent Fantastic A New Hope wave that even figures that were reissued had improvements in the paint apps. Now I know he doesn't have like a human face, so we won't see those improvements quite as strongly. Hasbro's been really improving like face paint, because he's a droid. We're not really going to see that, but I would be fascinated to really see this one alongside the older version to see if the colors, the weathering and all of that kind of stuff feels like a step up. For my personal opinion, I love the paintwork on recent Hasbro figures. So even if I had the opportunity to get the one that came out a while ago, that was 170. This one is a 340. That's quite a few figures along in the series. I get the feeling that this one's probably going to have perhaps better paintwork there. And I really love the weathering. We've got some really nice metallic touches here to him. This looks really cool. He's got one accessory there, a small blaster pistol, but honestly, you don't really need too much for him. He looks really, really cool. I'm so excited to have this one. I was so annoyed I never found the original one from Rogue One. He is so important in that movie. It was really annoying not to have him in my collection. So I was so excited to get this one in hand. And he looks really cool. So I do like the artwork here. It's nice and clear. I think it's an interesting pose. We can see his eyes, the paintwork there on his shoulder. It's pretty well balanced. Perhaps a little bit more to the left. We've got a little bit of sort of blank space here to the right. But overall, I think the front of this card looks really cool. His bubble is taller as well compared to the humanoid figures when we sort of line them up. You can see how much taller he is. I can't wait to get him out. Of course, I'm going to open him up very, very soon. I want to get him alongside standard human figures. Now, on the back, we can see, of course, that was VC 340. We've got that same green color. Now, he doesn't have too much in the way of accessories, so his pose on the back is pretty much the same pose as on the front there, just in front of the backing card figure. Now, we do actually have a character-specific blurb for this one because, of course, we know who he is. It's not a spoiler. A reprogrammed Imperial security droid, K-2SO, is an effective insertion agent as he can blend in perfectly at Imperial installations and outposts. So not too much of an introduction, doesn't say anything about the fact that he's, you know, working with Cassian or anything like that, just about him, and it's not spoilery for Andor either there. So that's kind of fun. Overall, I'm so excited to have this one, and I'm really hoping I can find a second one to add to my collection. Just really, really cool. And the third new vintage collection figure that I picked up is this Bo-Katan Kryze figure, noted as being Plazir 15 from the Mandalorian Series 3. So I know this one's kind of an interesting one. She has some differences in her appearance as we go along through the Mandalorian series that may not be reflected in a Hasbro figure. You know, if the differences are very, very minor, Hasbro generally doesn't change up the figures too much. But of course, she has a new shoulder piece in this particular figure. We can see that sort of new forged shoulder piece there with the Mythosaur signet. We've got some fun accessories for this one. We've got 2 blaster pistols, a helmet. It's a little bit hard to see, but it does have a peg inside, so it is a swappable head and helmet rather than the helmet trying to fit over her hair. That would probably never work. And she also comes with the dark saber. Now, this is a little bit of an interesting one. You may note the planet. Now, this picture with her helmet on, this looks like the Mines of Mandalore, and I thought that that would be a really fun naming plate there because we also have the Mandalorian figure that is noted as being Mines of Mandalore version there. We can see she's got her helmet on, the blade on. This really does feel like it's down in the depths underneath Mandalore, so I thought that would be the perfect name. So I'm not quite sure why they have chosen a different planet, different episode where she doesn't really wear her helmet. I thought that was a little bit of an odd choice there. Now, the background's out of focus. We don't really get that much here, but I really like the lighting on her helmet. I really like the artwork here. I think it's really nice. The figure itself is probably going to be very, very similar to a previous vintage collection figure, which I have on hand. This one is VC226. You can see the older style of backing card back in that era. So let's just take a quick look at these two side by side. And I can already see some differences here. This is going to be a very interesting one to open up. We've got different paint jobs here on the blaster pistols. These ones are brown and silver. These ones just look like the flat silver tone plastic there. And we've got a little bit of differences in terms of the armor. I know the shoulder plate is different. The faces look very different. I'm liking the improvements Hasbro is making with their human face paint in particular. This one, just really subtle, but it's just that kind of softer digital printing where we get the finer detail. The paintwork on this figure still looks a little bit more strong. So that's going to be really interesting to really take those out of the plastic and compare them side by side. A few other small paint differences. The blue on this one's a little bit more muted. We've got silver paint apps here on sort of the buckles for her holsters, which are unpainted on this figure as well. And I can see that we've just got a white edge on the darksaber here. It's not sort of like an electrified edge like on some of the other versions of this particular accessory. So not sure if I like that. It does look very straight when she's wielding, so it does match on the backing card art there, but it is different to other versions that we've seen. We can see we've got the same green color, though the font on this one is black compared to white on the new one. I find this white a little bit harder to read against the sort of vibrant green there. And I have to say, I like the art on this one better. This one just feels, it's not out of focus, but it's just not as crisp as artwork that I really, really like. This one just feels a little bit more of a high-res image, so I really like that. And I like the distribution of the accessories. It always feels important to me that we don't sort of have sort of dead zones here. Different to this one, but of course we've got a whole extra accessory with the dark saber there. So that's going to be a really fun one to unbox and compare. So let's just take a quick look at the back on this one. So we've got a posed action figure image there where she's holding the dark saber with her blaster pistols holstered, and she has the helmet on, recreating in part the backing card promotional image there as well. Vibrant green again, I guess it contrasts well with her blue armor. Wouldn't be the color that I'd probably choose as my first choice. And we've got a little bit of a blurb here on the back for this particular character. After Bo-Katan Kryze saves Din Djarin from a cyborg in the mines of Mandalore, he determines the darksaber should be returned to her as the rightful owner. So I think perhaps that blurb may explain why they have called this one Plazir 15, because I guess they're trying to reference that it's after the Mines of Mandalore that she fully gets the darksaber, even though she does wield it in that Mines of Mandalore episode. So I guess they're sort of waiting until she sort of, you know, fully got it from Din Djarin from the back there. And it's kind of interesting because normally the blurbs are about the characters. This one feels like it's sort of trying to connect this version of the character to the backing card art and the accessory, which is a little bit different. I like that. It's a little bit more specific, which I like to see. So overall, it's going to be interesting. I think I've got to take this figure out and go through all of the details to sort of really feel how I feel about this one. But I'm really a big fan of Bo-Katan. So of course I didn't mind having two versions there. I'm going to open these up and compare them side by side. That's going to be a lot of fun. So I know the base figure is probably a reissue, and for some collectors that's, you know, a bit of an annoyance when they would rather have a brand new character that hasn't been made. But for a fan of Bo-Katan as a character, I like seeing these variants. And of course we've got the two different VC numbers there as well, because they're slightly different in terms of the accessories, the paintwork, and of course we've got that different shoulder piece there. It's a little bit hidden by the plastic, so I think that one's going to be a lot of fun to open. So I can't wait. I do love the character. I hope we haven't seen the last of Bo-Katan. I hope that she has a significant role in the Mandalorian and Grogu film, because I feel like there's just a bit more of her story to tell. So I think this one is a fun one, especially if you don't own that original figure. I think this one's possibly going to be a good substitute for it, because I think the face paint on this one might be a step up. I definitely want to open that one up and take a closer look. So that was a fun look at 3 new Star Wars carded figures from the most recent wave of the vintage collection line by Hasbro. I was really excited and surprised, to be honest, that these arrived here in New Zealand so quickly. And especially I'm so happy to have new figures from Skeleton Crew and Andor Season 2, considering those shows haven't even started airing yet. This is just such a fun addition to my collection. I can't wait to open these up really soon. I'll have full unboxings out as soon as I can. Thank you so much for hanging out with me today as I took a closer look at some fun new vintage collection figures, and I had a lot of fun checking them out. I hope you have a wonderful morning, afternoon or evening wherever you are in the galaxy, and let's hang out again very soon for more Star Wars fun. May the Force be with you. If you're a vintage collection fan, I recently unboxed the Blurg and the Mandalorian figure set. That video is linked here in case you haven't already seen it, as well as a whole vintage collection playlist. This is the way.